Hello, everyone. My name is Sarah. Thank you for joining us today. I have a very special guest today. His name is Lee, and my husband and I met Lee at the old Bisbee Ghost Tour. He was our tour guide, and he was amazing. He's such a theatrical storyteller. And so that leads me into my first question. Lee, when did you first discover your love of storytelling?
Actually, it was quite a while ago, back when I was in grade school, probably fifth or sixth grade. My parents, during the summer, we lived in Northern Ohio at the time, they would send me to summer camp. And one year at summer camp, one of the things that the camp counselor in our cabin decided to do was to have the kids make up ghost stories based on, they'd give you, okay, it's got to have this and this in it. And it worked for me. And we kept doing that, and they kept saying, no, have Lee do another one. So apparently I had a natural talent for it, and I had fun with it. And that's kind of where it started.
Did you enjoy reading horror stories and ghost stories as a kid, or did you just always have an active imagination? Do you have any history of theater in your background?
As a matter of fact, I do. Um, Started really kind of in high school. I was in a number of plays. Wasn't National Thespian Society, but in the local thespian group in our high school in New Jersey. Um, Started out mostly backstage doing things, and eventually got some parts in various plays and whatnot. Went on to college. My first time in college, I was majoring in theater arts. Found that I had really enjoyed it, really loved it. So was in a number of productions there as well. Kind of fell out of that, generally speaking, for a while, but then about, oh, 20 some odd years ago, I got involved with a group called the SCA, Society for Creative Anachronism, which it's a group that it's a worldwide group, but they do medieval and Renaissance recreations and whatnot. And in that, I had to kind of take on a persona and act as that person most of the time when we were doing things. And I really enjoyed that. And I would occasionally, depending on the situation and the event, I would spin off into a different persona because, well, it was fun to do. It fit the occasion. So,
Is that
and then,
oh, sorry.
no, go ahead.
I was gonna say, is that kind of where your costume, because it seems like maybe you have a great costume for the tour, which you're wearing
Right.
today. Is that kind of where that idea came from?
A bit, yeah. It Renee, who's the owner of Old Bisbee Ghost Tours, one of the things that she requests when a ghost host works for her is that they come up with a costume that is roughly period style for Bisbee. Now, of course, since Bisbee's been around since 1880, that period encompasses a large span of time. But I felt that early Bisbee, the sort of Victorian, Edwardian era, sort of fit what I saw is appropriate for the ghost tours. And that's where most of this came from. Let me tip this down just a little bit so you can see a little more of my, like this vest that I wear, I actually picked up in one of the thrift stores in Bisbee. So it's a little hand painted vest. My wife made the coat for me. I've had this top hat as part of my collection of probably 40 hats or so. I wear this one. I've got a gray one. I've got a brown one. I've got a bowler hat. It just depends on the season and what's going on. I tend to do a few different ones during the ghost tour. Um, but yeah, that's where the kind of the idea that came from was some of the costuming that we did while playing in the SCA.
So when you give the tours of Bisbee, do you get to choose what ghost stories you tell, or is it kind of scripted for you?
It is generally scripted based on, there's two books that Renee has written during her research into the paranormal activity in Bisbee. And there is a script outline that we use that, you know, when we go to this place, these are the basic stories we tell. When we go into the next place, these are the stories. But I also include some additional things that I have experienced personally. Um, whether it's a personal encounter or it's something that somebody who's been on my tour has told me about encounters they've had with paranormal activity in Bisbee, that sort of thing. Plus, I'm the senior ghost host, and I've mostly trained most of the other ghost hosts now. And one of the things that I tell them when they're working for us is that you have to make your presentation your own. So even though the basic stories are the same, the information is based on Renee's research, how you present them, how you actually tell the stories has to be something that you feel works for you, because then it's going to work for the people that are on the tour too.
Right. To really make it your own.
Exactly.
So you are a history buff. You really enjoy history.
Yes.
What is your favorite time period and why?
Oddly enough, my love of history came later in life. History was one of the subjects that I least enjoyed in high school. But as I did world travel, I was in the army. I lived in Germany for a while. We've traveled, my wife and I have traveled all over Europe and a bunch of other places. And that sort of drew me into the whole history, enjoying it and whatnot. And probably my favorite period of history is probably 14th, 15th century, Elizabethan era, that sort of thing in Europe. There was so much going on there, so many different changes in governments and in religious influence on people, and of course the plagues and those sort of things. It just it fascinated me, and a lot of that has to do with the architecture too that I encountered while we were traveling Europe and whatnot. Which is, just as a side note, one of the other things I enjoy about Bisbee, because the layout in Old Bisbee, because of the varied architecture and the narrow canyons and the narrow streets, reminds me a lot of some of the European cities, the smaller ones that we visit. So,
What, like, is there one city in particular it reminds you of, or just in general?
a lot of the smaller cities and villages in Europe have that same kind of their. Again, most of them are old enough, have an old enough history that the streets were built when you didn't have vehicle traffic, so they weren't, big 2-lane streets and that sort of thing. So they tend to be narrower. The buildings tend to be closer to the road, that sort of thing. So it's a sort of a general early European feel that you get in a lot of Old Bisbee.
Would you care to share one of your maybe experiences that you've had with ghosts on the ghost tour?
Sure. One of the stories that I add in when I'm doing my tour happened at the Bisbee Grand Hotel. My wife and I, 30 some odd years ago, spent our wedding night at the Bisbee Grand in the Victorian suite. And one of the ghosts there is known to be a bit of a prankster. She likes to do things to entertain guests. I'm assuming she's doing it for her entertainment. And one of the things that she's known to do is to move furniture around when you're out of the room, or to take all the towels in the bathroom and make a neat pile in the middle of the floor. Well, the morning after our wedding night, my wife went into the bathroom, ran a bath in the clawfoot tub, came back into the other room, went back in to take her bath, brought a chair with her, set 2 towels on that chair next to the clawfoot tub, came back out of the other room to finish her preparations, went back in to find that all the towels in the bathroom, including the 2 she'd put on that chair, were now piled neatly in the middle of the floor. Well, she blamed me. We didn't know anything. We'd never heard any of the ghost stories or anything. So it was a matter of married less than 24 hours. It's already my fault. When we started doing the ghost tours and I learned about Pearl, who is the lady ghost in the hotel, we decided that, well, maybe we had met Pearl that morning. We just weren't aware of it at the time.
That's funny. And you and your wife weren't living in Bisbee at the time, right?
No, we actually live about a half an hour from Bisbee, but we spend a lot of time in Bisbee. Both of us just really enjoy it, whether it's climbing stairs or just people watching, eating in the restaurants. It's a wonderful place. All the restaurants there don't stay open long unless they serve really good food. And it's just such an interesting, calming. One of the other things that we do on the ghost tour is the haunted pub crawl that we do every Saturday night. And a lot of the people that come down to do the pub crawl, I have a number of people that come down, say, from the Phoenix and Tucson areas, major cities, that have very stressful lifestyles. They're emergency room nurses or doctors, they're firefighters, police, that sort of thing. And they come to Bisbee almost annually just because they can come there and de-stress. They love taking the tour. It's obviously a lot of fun, but just being in Bisbee lets them just sort of shed all that stress and anxiety and stuff. And that's just sort of the atmosphere in Bisbee.
Yes. Do you have a favorite restaurant or a restaurant that you would recommend to people visiting
Oh,
Bisbee?
any number of them. Kind of depends on what you're up for. If you're up for what I consider the sort of the high end restaurant in Bisbee, is a place called Cafe Roca. They've been open for over 30 years now, I believe. They've actually been one of the most highly rated restaurants in the state of Arizona for years. And they the food is always amazing. On kind of the other end of the scale is up in Brewery Gulch. There's a place called the Quarry. And the Quarry isn't, it's a bar and restaurant, and they serve amazing comfort food. Not fancy, not high end food. It's things like Gouda macaroni and cheese, the ultimate grilled cheese sandwich, meatloaf, that sort of thing. But the owner is so picky, so concerned about the quality of the food comes out of the restaurant. They even make their own ketchup, ranch dressing, hollandaise sauce. They make that all in-house themselves to make sure that it's up to the level of quality that they want. So, but it's just pretty much any restaurant in Old Bisbee is going to serve really amazing food.
So going back to your, you said you were a part of a group that did Renaissance.
Right.
Are you still active with them? Do you still, did they?
Not so much anymore. We've kind of stepped away from that. It was taking up a whole lot of time. We got very involved in it. Aside from just the general character I was doing and my wife was doing, we also got very much, because the group, it really concentrates on not just the fun part of it, but on recreating. So you have people in the SCA that are recreating pretty much any art or skill or anything else, from cooking to dancing to music to jewelry making to fencing to anything that would have been going on in that period, that people try to recreate it in the style that was accurate in that time period. So we were both very much involved in that. I was a rapier fencer. I actually taught Renaissance rapier and dagger for a number of years. My wife was more into the arts side of things. She does spinning, or not spinning so much, but weaving. She hand makes lace. Yeah, all the in different styles. Just all many things. She still does a lot of that. She was also part of the Bisbee Fiber Arts Guild. She was ex-president of that a number of years ago. But the SCA itself, we still have a lot of friends that are members of the SCA, but it had become sort of a time sink for us. So we decided to sort of move on and find other things to do. And that also is kind of a thing that's sort of driven me during my life. I've had a lot of different jobs, primarily because I tend to be the person that I learn something new, I get good at it, and then shortly thereafter I get bored with it. I want to go learn something else new. So, like I said, I've done a bunch of different things because of that.
Is that why you switched your character when you first started with a group?
Sometimes, yeah, because I was looking for different things to do, and something that would fit into that character and that character's time period. But that's also one of the reasons that I still enjoy doing the ghost tours, is because it's still fun. It's a lot about the history of Bisbee as well as the paranormal activity. I enjoy interacting with people, telling the stories, listening to their stories, and that sort of thing. And that's because usually 7 to 8 years is about the time it's time for me to go learn something new. And I've been doing this for a little over 7 years. But so far, I'm still enjoying doing it. So I'm not looking for anything else just
Oh, that's good. I'm sure Renee is happy to hear that.
yet. Yes.
Is there anything else you would like to add?
Nothing that I can think of off the top of my head, other than thank you for taking the time to do the interview. Hopefully, your podcast viewers will enjoy this. And hopefully they'll come to Bisbee and find out what an interesting place it is. It's just a wonderful place to spend time, to meet people. There's lots to do in Bisbee. A lot of people come down to this part of the state to go to Tombstone, which is always fun. But Tombstone is so commercially touristy nowadays. Bisbee has worked really hard to avoid that kind of commercial tourism, and it still feels like a small town, which it is, and a neighborhood, but there is just so much history there, so much longer than what Tombstone's history is, and so much more involved. And the people are very very welcome.
And Bisbee is just, it's so quirky. I
It
love
is.
all the little stores and the artisans. There's so many artists.
Oh yeah,
You never know who or what you're gonna see on the street.
absolutely, absolutely. Yeah, it is. After the mines closed down there, because it was originally a big mining town. That's what it's first started as. It was at one point the largest city in Arizona, which most people have no clue. But after the mines closed down, it kind of shut down for a number of years until it was rediscovered by the artists and the hippies, who are the ones that have sort of moved in and taken over and rebuilt Bisbee, or reinvented it at least, as primarily the arts and tourism destination. And they are a strong presence in Bisbee, and you feel that when you're in Bisbee. Like you said, there's a lot of arts. There's a lot of street art. There will be people doing this, that, and the other thing, entertaining people dressed in the way that they feel like dressing. So there's always a lot of people in what some people consider costumes. For part, if you ever go to a site called discoverbisbee.com, it lists all the annual events and weekend events and stuff that come up there. And it's things like, yeah, they have music festivals, which are fun. They have food festivals, which are fun. But they also have things like the celebration of the return of the turkey vultures with a big parade and everything. There's the Pirates of the High Desert weekend. There's Alice in Bisbee Land, which is an entire Alice in Wonderland themed weekend in Bisbee. It's just, there is so many different fun things to do there. And the ghost tour is one of them.
What is your favorite attraction or event to do in Bisbee?
Oh gosh, wow. There are so many of them, and I do enjoy them all. I would have to say probably my favorite one is the Alice in Bisbee Land weekend. It's just, again, it gives me another chance to dress up funny. I actually, when I'm doing the ghost tours, I've got a big, it's basically the hat from Johnny Depp's portrayal of the Mad Hatter. It's a great big huge hat stuff. And I wear that during Alice in Bisbee Land weekend to do the ghost tours. Yeah. And that's the thing, is it is just a lot of fun.
Yeah, I love the costumes and like I said, just people watching. I mean, when we went
Yes.
to take the tour, there was a woman walking on stilts and she looked like she was headed to the circus. I don't know where she was coming from or where she was going.
Yeah, I think the weekend you took the tour, there was actually over in Lowell, which is one of the other districts of Bisbee, they had a big arts festival. One of the things that's available in Bisbee that Renee's involved in, there's a studio there that teaches aerial arts. Basically, it's like you would see in Cirque du Soleil kind of thing. And that was the stilt walker was one of the students there and one of the instructors. And at that event that weekend, they were doing aerial walks plus the stilt walkers and some of the other stuff. But yeah, that's not unusual to see people doing strange things in Bisbee.
And I love that because when you go to Jerome,
Right,
you don't really see that. It's more about the tourism and the mine.
right.
And Bisbee, it still has that, like you said, hippie and artist. Jerome was,
Yes.
rediscovered by hippies and artists too, but their presence isn't as felt as in
Right.
in
Yeah,
Bisbee.
you're right. The tourism in Bisbee evolved in a broader scope to encompass those arts and those quirks and stuff. The tourism in Jerome sort of evolved in more a commercial tourism
Yeah.
kind of way.
I
I
love
love Jerome, but it's not the same as Bisbee.
it's very different.
Yes.
Bisbee is just so cool. I mean, you have the magic show, you have a tarot reader set up right next to the magic show. Like you said,
Right.
the aerial arts, you have
Right.
all of these amazing,
We have the axe throwing
yes.
place, yeah, the axe and knife throwing place. Pretty much every weekend, most of the hotels and bars in town have live music. The music scene in Bisbee is amazing. It really is. We get an incredible breadth of different styles of music. Musicians that come in and perform in Bisbee. You're pretty much welcome in Bisbee, no matter what you're into or where you're from or who you are, as long as you're not coming to Bisbee to cause trouble.
Right. Yes. Well, thank you, Lee, so much. This
You're welcome.
was fun. And yeah, thank you.
Okay. Take care. Thank you.
You too.
Bye bye.
Bye.